want to welcome you into and thank you so much for joining us here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates, with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner, and myself. My name is Chris Swan. Here's how I reach out to the show, 419-794-3030. That's 419-794-3030. Always online, day and night, americasretirementheadquarters.com. On today's show, there are hundreds upon hundreds of different options when it comes to claiming your Social Security. So the question is, when is the right time for you? And with the tax filing deadline just weeks away, are there any last-minute things you should do? But first, let me check in. I did say the show is normally with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. Occasionally, it is Chaz Price. So I have Scott and Chaz here with me today. Guys, glad to be with you. How are we?
Yeah, we're doing well, Chris. Nolan's down in sunny Florida right now. He's been down there for a couple of weeks, but glad to have you, Chaz, and looking forward to a good show. This crazy Northwest Ohio weather, it was 70 degrees the other day, and it's 30 degrees now, so I can't wait until we get something a little bit better coming down in spring here, right?
Yeah, I feel bad for Nolan and being down in Florida. He missed out
Poor
on
guy.
He sent me a text. He sent me a text this morning, and I told him some information I had on the client. He said, "Oh, that's great news. That's the best news I'm going to hear." I says, "Are you kidding me? You're sipping umbrella drinks on the beach in Florida. How can that be the best news you're going to hear today?" So, yeah.
It's just a good metaphor for retirement, honestly, because while we do all want those 72-degree days, throughout our retirement, we're going to have some snow, we're going to have some rain, we're going to have those less than pristine days when it comes in. So you need to have a plan in place to account for all of those, and that's kind of what we're here for on the show, is to get you aware of those and develop a strategy to an all-weather plan, I guess, when it comes to your retirement. So again, the number is 419-794-3030. I mentioned Social Security right there at the start, and once seniors reach the age of 62, that's when they can begin taking Social Security benefits, but it does come at a cost because the monthly check you receive goes up each year that you delay taking it. Essentially, the earlier you take it, you're giving yourself a permanent pay reduction. There was an article in the Motley Fool that looked at 3 different ages to claim Social Security. Guys, if you don't mind, let's run down the list and tell us how you typically advise clients as far as when to go about claiming.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Chris, I'll take this one. This is kind of my bag. We get asked a lot about Social Security, and I think it's probably one of the most important decisions that we help our clients make. And one of the things that we help them do is just, first off, understand really what the value is with Social Security. And so Social Security, first and foremost, it's a monthly income that you cannot outlive. And so that's an important feature, because for most retirees today that don't have access to traditional pensions, Social Security is going to be a big part of their income throughout their retirement lifetime. Secondarily, it's not chump change. I mean, if your benefit is roughly about $2,000 today, 30 years from now, you're going to be having drawn about $1.2 million from Social Security. So it's a pretty big chunk of money. It also keeps up with inflation. And we all know that silent killer inflation is, one of the biggest expenses that you're going to have. It just constantly is eating away at your purchasing power, and so you need investments that are going to keep up with that. And so historically, Social Security has kept about a 2.6% rate of inflation going forward. So those are some of the things that we talk about first with Social Security. And obviously, there's 3 big dates when people look at taking Social Security. First is age 62, which is as soon as possible. I know a lot of people typically will consider taking that, but we really don't know why. I mean, 67% of the population in the United States is taking a reduced benefit, whether it's they're concerned about not living long enough to get the full benefit from it, or maybe it's an entitlement thing. But we do know that people are living longer than ever, and that's one of their major concerns with retirement, is outliving their money. Yet 67% of the people are taking Social Security early.
I run into that a lot, Chaz, where signing people up for Medicare, or they may retire prior to 65, so they're not eligible for Medicare. And the first thing I ask is, "Are you taking Social Security?" And a lot of them say, "Oh, yes, I'm taking it. I'm taking it as soon as I can." And I always throw in why.
Yeah.
And like you said, one of the big reasons is, I've paid into it. I want my money.
Exactly.
And they said, "Well, what if I die?" And I don't know. I have a different perspective on it. If you die, unfortunately you die. But so what if you don't collect anything?
Yeah, it's
You
really
know, I
about
mean,
maximizing
yes,
the dollar, not
exactly,
taking
exactly.
everything from it that you can. So yeah, and that's a good point. And so, thinking about when you're going to take Social Security involves a lot of that. That question, those questions that you're throwing out
Mhm.
there is, are you still working? And so there's three considerations that we have for people that are thinking about taking Social Security. The first would be, are you still working? And so if you're going to take Social Security early, around 62, prior to your full retirement age, there could be a penalty
Right.
for taking Social Security and still working. The government doesn't like you to double dip, so they're going to
What's the
penalize you.
maximum you can make prior to full retirement age?
Prior to full retirement age is $19,000 approximately, or they take $1 of every $2 over that in your benefits.
So it doesn't pay.
Yeah, doesn't pay to
Not
do
at
it. So it's definitely something you want to consider. The other thing I talk to people about with Social Security is it's based on your top 35 earnings years.
Right.
And so if you're still, working, if you're in the peak earnings years of your work history, maybe it would make sense to hold off on taking Social Security
Mhm.
for a couple of years, because if you're getting, if you're going to be able to replace one of those 35 with a higher year in earnings, it's going to help your benefit quite a bit.
I came into that situation with a client I had earlier this past week, and he said, "Well, my new job I'm in right now, I'm making more money now, so I'm sure that is going to give me a little bit more in my Social Security when I do draw that."
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense.
And we can help you figure that calculation out. You can also go to ssa.gov and just download a record of your earnings history, and we can help you walk through that. The second consideration I walk through with all my clients is longevity. And like I said earlier, people are just living longer. I know we do seminars. We did one in October last year about Social Security and Medicare, and I always like to ask in the room if anybody knows anyone that is over age 100. And usually there's about a hand or two that goes up, and then I ask how many people actually feel like 100, and then every hand in the room typically goes up.
Exactly.
But there are currently about 2.5 million people on Social Security in the United States right now that are over the age of 90. And 70% of them are also over the age of 100. So there's a pretty good likelihood that you're going to get to 90 if you're already in your 60s right now, and then maybe even beyond that. And I was thinking about this. Do you guys remember, I think this was probably in the early 90s, Willard Scott? He was kind of the, Al Roker does his spot now. He was on,
Yes.
I don't know if it was Good Morning America or whatnot, but he would always have a piece where he highlighted somebody that reached age 100. And I think now Al Roker does that, but you got to be like 105.
Yeah.
And if you're beyond 100 now, because longevity is people are just living longer. And so that just kind of gives you an idea of, people are living longer.
Sure.
And then lastly, we talk about your spouse. So the thing we caution, or one of the major considerations we have for our clients, is that when you're making Social Security decisions, make sure that you look at it in the context of your spouse as well. And the reason being is that the majority of women in the United States are drawing Social Security benefits based on their spouse's earnings record. And so by holding off, by waiting to collect Social Security past your full retirement age and beyond, maybe up until age 70, at which point it doesn't really make sense to wait any longer.
Right.
But by doing that, you're locking in, an extra 24% of that benefit. And so your spouse could potentially draw, a higher benefit just based on the fact that you waited. Because if, God forbid, something happens and you die, your spouse gets to collect the higher of the two. They can collect either their own or their spouse's, whatever's greater.
Right. And that's exactly what happened with my dad. We talked about this. Dad passed away. Mom's Social Security, she gets a letter in the mail. Mom's Social Security dropped, and then they added a portion of that to Dad's, and she got more on the Social Security because, Dad did things right. And I know that he waited till full retirement age to draw Social Security, so that's obviously it worked out well for them. But that's a real example of exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So 65, is 65 the optimal time?
It really depends, honestly. And I know I say that's always an answer in financial planning, but 65 is kind of the age when people really start considering, Social Security, just
Sure.
because they have to make a lot of other decisions at age 65, Medicare. But what we do is what's called a Social Security optimization report, Scott,
Mhm.
where if we're going to look to see what gives our client the best probability of success, meaning not running out of money. And in some cases, it would make sense for us maybe to delay Social Security and take it at maybe even beyond age 65,
Mhm.
and draw on some other assets on the investment side to kind of bridge that gap. It also depends on what your full retirement age is.
Right.
I believe if you're born before 37 or earlier, your full retirement age is 65.
Right.
And then, most people are somewhere between that 66, 67 range right now.
The people I'm running into right now with Medicare are all 66 and 6 months or 67.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things, like you mentioned, with age 65, one of the big things that happens, and it's not happening like it used to years ago, but I mean, what happens at 65? You turn 65, you retire, you sign up for Social Security and Medicare. I mean, those are the big things that used to happen
Knock
at
it all
65.
out at once.
Yeah. Well, that's not happening anymore. People are working past 65. One of the big misconceptions, I think, is the full retirement age. A lot of people say, well, if I reach full retirement, I have to retire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not the case at all. You don't have to retire just because you reach full retirement age. Full retirement age is the age, for those that are 66 and a half, that's when they can draw their Social Security without having any drastic penalty with income.
Right.
And continue on. Another thing to keep in mind is when you do sign up for Medicare, Medicare can lower your Social Security payment at 65 because it comes right out of your Social Security check.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big thing to keep in mind. There. So obviously the optimal time to take it is to wait till 70.
Most of the calculations that we run is age 70 shows the greatest possibility and probability of success because you've let that benefit cook for as long as it could.
Sure.
You've got the maximum locked in for Social Security. It does sometimes beg the question, though, of how long do we have to live in order for that decision to make the most sense?
Right, that break-even point,
The
right?
break-even point, yeah.
What is the? I know it's hard to say because it's different with everybody, but what would that be? I've heard numbers of anywhere from 82 to 84 is kind of like a break even. Is that kind of an average?
That's pretty good. I
Right.
would think another 14 or 15 years after age 70 is when you hit that break even point.
Sure.
And so we don't like to just have our clients break even. We want them to be,
Right.
better than
Of
successful.
course, yeah.
So we'll make a lot of those decisions in the context of their financial plan, making sure that we optimize every single dollar that they have and ultimately improving their success and also the success of their spouse.
Sure.
Depending on how, what the age difference is and what their benefits options are as well. So we take all that into consideration, and then we give you kind of our best guess estimate, which makes the most sense. We look to see if that's possible based on your investment assets. And
So there again, I
sit
guess
down.
the answer to the question is, what's the optimal time? It depends.
It does, as all things usually in finance.
Yes.
It's a very ambivalent answer, but we can't really just give a cookie cutter answer for everybody out there because no one's situation is going to be the same. Is it going to be your neighbors, your friends at church, things like that? Let me ask you something, and I think I'm right about this, but I could very well be wrong. That's possible. If you claim Social Security and you realize you made a mistake, you turned it on too early, is there a window where you can basically have a mulligan period?
Yeah, you've got 12 months. You've got the
Okay.
first year basically to pay back everything that you got from Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, it is an option. And actually, we have had a couple of clients do that. There's a few advisors in the office. I know that they've worked through that issue with the clients, and it's been to their advantage, obviously, to do so. So it's a little painful, but
Sure.
it's going to make sense in the end. So, but yes, that is
Again,
possible.
Making more down the line by delaying. There's a lot of virtue to that. I think if I can weigh in here, why people claim it's 62, a lot of people I would imagine is because you hear these stories about the Social Security trust going solvent by
Right.
2034 or 2035. It's going to quote unquote be out of money, and so I think a lot of people are saying, I want to go ahead and get it while I can get it. I've spent so much time paying into it. And there's a number of different reasons why we're in the situation that we are. People living longer, less people paying in than there are claiming. I think when Social Security was first incepted, it was something like 150 workers to every one person claiming Social Security. Now the ratio is closer to 3 to 1. So a lot of reasons why the numbers are going that way. But I would venture to say, and I can't imagine that you guys are telling clients that Social Security is going to be done. It's not going to exist after 2034, after 2035. They're going to find a way to keep it afloat, correct?
Oh, well, the way this the way this administration, the way the government spends money, I would be shocked to see Social Security go bankrupt. That's my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth, but I tell you what, I just can't see that happening.
Yeah, and I think if anything, maybe just continuing to extend the age at which you can qualify for it.
That's what I see, yeah.
Maybe even reducing benefits. It's amazing how just a small change like that could make a significant impact on that deficit that you speak about, Chris. But you're right, that's a valid point. Almost every single piece of research that I've read about it shows that there is some insolvency around that 2035, 2037 time frame. So in some cases, we can run your financial plan not including Social Security, but it is definitely not something that the majority of our clients, age 65 to 70-year-olds, are having us consider. Now, maybe for a younger individual, and Social Security could look like a lot of different things. I did some research in my undergrad about that, and it could be something where maybe we get an account where they just deposit, kind of like a 401k, and the government gives you a certain amount of money, and they say, okay, there's your Social Security. Go do something with it. So that's a possibility as well. But no, I don't think that Social Security would completely ever be eliminated.
That would be akin to political suicide, I think, for anybody in Washington that would do away with it. They have tried to kick the can down the road. You talked about that tax threshold. $19,000 is when you hit that first threshold where 50% of your benefit could be taxed. That went into effect in the 80s during the Reagan administration. That tax threshold has not increased since the Reagan administration. And if you're married, I think it's about $32,000. Again, they could increase. There's a 50% tax penalty, correct? And a 85% tax penalty
for Social Security benefits. Yeah, if you make over a certain amount of money, Social Security, not all of your benefits are taxable. It's usually either 0, 50, or 85% of the benefits are taxable. So it's kind of a rub that a lot of people have, is that you paid taxes to get Social Security, then you pay tax on your Social Security benefits that you paid tax to get, and then when you go to buy goods and services, there's a tax on that. So it's Social Security benefits are taxable, and that's a big concern right now as we're coming into tax season and finishing up. Is
good segue. Right into the next section, right here.
Exactly. If you're looking at a big tax bill this year, the markets, we had a pretty decent year in 2021. There's a lot of capital gains and some distributions that clients received, and then that also contributes to your taxability of your Social Security benefits, and so you have to be cognizant of what's coming in, income-wise, because that does affect the taxability of your Social Security.
We're going to talk more about the tax season, the 2021 tax season, in just a second. Let me give out the number really quick, 419-794-3030. If you have questions about when to claim Social Security, and again, don't claim it just at 62 because you want to get it while you can, because as we'd mentioned here with the taxation situation, it could be a, cutting off your nose to spite your face sort of situation. Yes, you're getting the check, but if you're paying, half of it or 85% of it back in the form of taxes, what's the point? So very much so, measure twice, cut once. Sit down and speak with someone like the team at America's Retirement Headquarters and figure out the optimal situation for you. 419-794-3030, or go online to americasretirementheadquarters.com. The tax filing deadline is right around the corner, the day after Easter, as a matter of fact, April 18th. And if you didn't put the maximum amount of money into an IRA or an HSA last year, there is still time. The deadline to make those contributions, same date, April 18th. Is this always a good idea, guys? If you can afford it, do you advise anything else that can be done before the deadline?
So with the IRAs, I will tell you this. I think it's always a good idea to maximize your contributions if it fits your budget and fits your if you're able to do so, why not do it, right?
Yeah. I would always say, do it till it hurts.
Yeah.
Put money in until you can feel it, in your paycheck.
Yeah.
It's gonna benefit you for sure.
We were talking about the all of the taxation, and one thing I will tell you, HSAs is kind of like in a wheelhouse for me. I love HSAs. If anybody were to have a qualified high deductible health plan, you can contribute to an HSA. An HSA is a health savings account, and it is a qualified account. It's money you put in, and it's one of the few tools out there that has actually got the triple tax advantage. You can take the money tax-free or pre-tax, from your payroll check and deposit money into a tax-free account. The money you put in is 100% tax deductible reduces your taxable income. And then when it comes time to pull that money out, it's tax-free. So it's a triple tax. I mean, that's a huge advantage. And a lot of people are kind of missing the boat on this. If you have a HSA account, you can actually use it for a retirement tool. There are several different things you can take that money and use that money in an HSA. I've got some clients that got $50,000-$60,000 built up in an HSA account.
Wow.
That's a lot. That's not what I normally see. A lot of people put that money in there and they use that to supplement their income. Their deductibles and that. But you can actually use it as a retirement tool. Just to give you some examples of where that money can be spent, office visits or co-pays on your health insurance. Your deductibles, any deductibles you might have. If you have a high deductible plan, you move into Medicare and you go with an Advantage plan where you've got some out-of-pocket co-pays, you can use that health savings account for that. You can use it for dental expenses, vision expenses, prescription drugs. Any of those items out of your pocket, you can use the HSA. The other really nice thing, and a good reason to build up an HSA account, is you can actually use that money to pay your Medicare premiums.
That's huge.
So someone that's got $50,000 in an HSA account, they'll never pay a Medicare premium. I mean, right now it's $170.10 a month, and it was $148.50 last year, and it's going to go up next year. We know that. Those are things that are just givens. But this is a way to actually lessen that expense, that monthly expense you have during retirement. Hearing aids, hospital physical therapy, wheelchairs, walkers. You can actually, here's another one that a lot of people don't know about, you can actually use it for some long-term care coverage. So these are all things that we talk about routinely here at America's Retirement Headquarters and AMA and the group here. But these are all expenses that are out of your pocket. So just to give you some ideas on what an HSA and how much you can contribute. For 2021, an individual can contribute up to $3,600. A married couple or family can contribute up to $7,200. Now, if you're an old man like me, anybody over 55 years old can do an additional $1,000 catch-up. So that basically means you could put in $9,200 into an HSA, get the advantage of pre-tax dollars, reduce your taxable income, and have tax-free when you pull that money out.
Scott, how do you know if you have a high deductible? What does your deductible have to be?
So your health insurance premium, those deductibles have fluctuated, but the lowest deductible, I believe, is $2,500 at this point. But you have to have a plan that actually it'll actually tell you whether it's a qualified HSA account.
Gotcha.
Most high deductible plans, for example, you cannot have a office copay, you cannot have a prescription card, you cannot have any of those items and have a high deductible health plan that's qualified for an HSA account.
Got it.
So these are all good reasons to maximize your HSA account. Put as much money as you can, like you said. Put that money in there, and as much as you possibly can for last year, and then maximize it out this year.
Yeah, I love how if you've noticed in our segments and our shows, everything kind of coordinates around taxes. There's always a component of Social Security, tax regarding Social Security, tax regarding your health care and medical spending strategies. It's the one thing that we can control. It's that old adage where it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Sure.
And I think that's one thing that you'll see that's unique here at America's Retirement Headquarters is that in everything that we do, it has a lens of tax overlay on it, and that helps us. It's the difference between investment management and wealth management in helping you save that 10 or 15%, maximizing those dollars. Similar to the way that we recommend clients, contribute to an IRA. Is it better to contribute to a traditional? Is it better to contribute to a Roth? Again, it depends on your situation, whether or not it makes sense to do a Roth conversion. But essentially, the concepts that we try to get across to our clients are, do you think it's better to pay tax on the seed or on the harvest? Right. And I ask that sometimes the clients, they'd say, well, I'd rather pay on the seed.
Of course.
Because the harvest is going to be great. And so that's a simple analogy of whether or not traditional or Roth makes the most sense to you. When do you want to pay tax? Do you want to pay now, or do you want to pay on the growth of that investment?
I don't want to pay at all.
I don't want to pay at all.
That is the thing you have to keep in mind. You still do have to pay them. I mean, we're not saying anything that's that's not above level here. Taxes are a completely different game when it comes to retirement, and so many people are concerned with April 15th or April 18th this year. What they owe the tax man, what they owe the IRS this year. But what about for the next 20 years, the next 30 years of your retirement? Do you have a plan for that? If not, you need to pick up the phone and speak with America's Retirement Headquarters, because markets will fluctuate. The money you have in the market will go up and down. But once you write that check to Uncle Sam, it's gone. So go ahead and start developing that plan, that tax-savvy plan with America's Retirement Headquarters today. Pick up the phone, give a call, 419-794-3030, or you can always find them online, americasretirementheadquarters.com. There's more to come, actually, with America's Retirement Headquarters. Second half hour coming up next after the break.